Lover's Moon, a novel by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss. Read by the authors. Sunday, May 22nd, 2001. Chapter 3. Michael. 10:03 a.m. I had to fight back tears of frustration and anger as I stared at the blank page of the Word document in front of me. I thought it would be different. But after all these years of wins in my writing life, writer's block could hit me out of the blue and take me back down into the darkness. This was the wrong time. I was already behind on the manuscript deadline because of the time lost to the monthly cycle of morphing into a wolf from sundown to sunrise. Yesterday when I got home, I should have used that time to write. But I didn't write a single word. Instead, I'd spent most of the day kicking myself for turning down that blatant offer of no-strings sex from Beatrice. It was a useless waste of time. And now I sat here staring at the blank page. I tried something that sometimes kick-started the words and fueled my imagination. I typed out exactly what I'd been thinking. Maxwell Bronte stared in glassy-eyed defiance at the blank page in front of him. It did nothing for me except perhaps remind me that the line was a little derivative of the Rush song Losing It. I deleted those words, then sat back in my chair and sighed. I thumbed back from the blank chapter I'd been sitting in front of for the past half hour and scrolled through the nearly 70,000 words I had already written in the manuscript for Tome of Terror. It was the Maxwell Bronte novel where he was trying to solve a crime related to a rare edition of the Necronomicon. I had done enough research to fill the book with realistic enough elements, but I hadn't written or even figured out the climax. So I was at that critical part of my process where I preferred to be able to bounce the existing manuscript off of an expert in the field. Something about that exercise, about the three-dimensionality of it, drove things home for me. Talking through the plot elements, the supporting characters, understanding just a little more about their world would often give me just the right insight. Some aspect that often comes in the midst of the conversation, that drives everything home for me. I suppose it's like one of the last few pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that will fit into place. In this case, I needed an expert on the occult, and yesterday's attempt to meet with one had been a complete bust. Not to mention embarrassing. I hated having to turn down Beatrice, to let her down. But even if I had succumbed to the temptation of enjoying an afternoon of carnal bliss with her, I'm pretty sure when we got back to my apartment I likely would have resorted to the Poindexter I'd been my whole life. I would have grinned bashfully, laughing like Goofy, and saying something like, "Gosh, I think you're real pretty, but I have a book to go work on." The phone on my desk rang. I picked it up. Any distracting port in a writer's block storm. "Michael?" It was Anne, my agent Mac's assistant. "I'm so sorry." She was responding to the voicemail I had left her about the off encounter I'd had with Beatrice, a connection that Anne had set up. "I had no idea," she continued. "When she contacted us, she positioned herself as an expert and outright lied about her background." "That's okay, Anne. I know you're doing your best. Heck, in helping me with this, you're already going above and beyond." I thought about this. Anne's role as my literary agent's personal and professional assistant meant catering to his every whim, need, and desire, and he was a demanding and belligerent boss. Yet, despite all that Anne did for Mac, she always went out of her way to offer me additional support. She always took pity on me and provided assistance that benefited me and my writing goals. When she'd learned I was behind with this manuscript deadline, she'd offered to spend the time sourcing an expert contact for me, knowing I needed that extra time to focus on writing and getting the manuscript completed. "It's my pleasure, Michael," Anne said. "But I didn't just call to apologize. I called to let you know some good news." "What's that?" I asked, hoping it would be another extension on the manuscript deadline. "I've gotten in contact with another professional." "Do you think that's a good idea? I'm really behind here, and yesterday's misunderstanding set me back an entire day of word count. I can't afford more of that." "This one I double-checked. She is legit. She owns an occult shop in the East Village called Enchanting Magic. Her name is Gail Sommers." "You sure this isn't another stalker?" "I spoke with her, Michael. Even asked her a few details about her business and about the occult. She's who and what she says she is." I thought about it. I wasn't getting any writing done. Nothing I usually use to break out a writer's block was working, and I could do it this evening since my cycle was finished for the month. "Okay," I said. "I suppose it won't hurt to give this a try. Thanks, Anne. When can I meet with her?" "I'll give you her number, and you can set something up." 5:55 p.m. I glanced at the time as I reached the Barnes & Noble, located at 555 Fifth Avenue. My phone was showing 5:55. That coincidental juxtaposition of things lining up brought an extra bounce to my step. But so did the fact that we'd be meeting at the Starbucks inside a magnificent bookstore. Because even if this meeting turned out to be a bust, at least I'd be able to salvage some good from it by browsing through the stacks of books. Gail and I had chatted briefly on the phone after I'd called her. We had agreed to meet at this particular location because it was convenient for me, and she had already been planning on being in the neighborhood shortly before 6 p.m. I liked it when plans fell together in that way. But more than that, I was appreciative she'd been able to meet me today. I was already behind the 8 ball with this deadline, blocked for making my progress, and I hoped that hearing some insights from a person who understood the occult and even ran a shop specializing in magic and witchcraft could kickstart what I needed to act on. After moving through the main door and pausing to take in the powerful essence of the smell of all those books, merged with the odors of the Starbucks, a truly exquisite wonder, I turned right and walked toward the wide-open cafe area. I spotted her immediately. She was a gorgeous brunette in a black cotton shirt with a lacy frill pattern around the neck, underneath a shiny black leather jacket. Just above the neckline of the blouse, she wore a black leather collar with silver studs. Her legs were crossed under the small round table, and I could see she was wearing tight black leather pants. This look screamed occult to me, so I was sure it had to be her. And, intriguing as she already was in appearance, there was an additional underlying essence I picked up from her almost immediately. It hung over her like an aura, one that perhaps someone with my enhanced sensory abilities could pick up on. She wasn't just sitting there in the cafe. She was subtly scoping it out, reading the room. She wasn't merely aware of all the people around her. She was actively participating in the room's flow, its very essence. There was a confidence and forceful feminine presence coming from the room. I knew it was her smell because of its mixture with the leather she was wearing. She was both predatory and protective in her subtle, yet powerfully mature presence over the room. Did I mention that she was stunning? One of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen in my life? The 2 or 3 seconds I'd had observing her felt like an hour of me standing there in awe, and I consciously checked myself to ensure my bottom jaw wasn't hanging open. Her eyes landed on me. By the way I could hear her heart subtly change its beat, she knew exactly who I was before her lips turned up in a slight grin. But the look on her face and the scent coming off her were filled with the confident recognition that comes with the acknowledgement that we both knew who the other person was. Of course, when she turned her smile at me, there was a sparkle that I can only describe as magic, coming from those green eyes that made my own heart skip a beat. I felt as if a spell had been cast on me, and another eternity took place as I looked at her, even though I knew it had only been a fraction of a second. To have someone like her smile like that while looking me straight in the eye was a wonder I had never known was possible. When that eternal split second was over, I glanced down, almost certain I would spot the chin of my open mouth resting on the tops of my shoes. I was thankful there was a purposeful intent to this meeting, otherwise I would never have had the courage to speak with such a stunning beauty. "You're here for information about the occult," I reminded myself. "This isn't a date." And with that reminder, I mustered up the courage to place one foot in front of the other to maneuver myself over to the table where she sat, introduce myself, and get on with the business at hand. You've been listening to Lover's Moon. a paranormal romantic comedy by Mark Leslie and Julie Strauss. Read by the authors. Lover's Moon is book 5 in the Canadian Werewolf Series, published by Stark Publishing and available in print, ebook, and audiobook. The music used in this production, Waltz Primordial by Kevin MacLeod featuring Alexander Nakarada, was licensed via Incomptech.com and is copyrighted by Kevin MacLeod.